If you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Nikola Tesla. In 2016, the FBI released hundreds of pages of his missing files, which were kept hidden from the public due to rumors of Tesla's invention of the so-called death ray. Did Tesla really have this knowledge, or was he just going senile in his old age? Our government didn't seem to want to take those chances in the midst of the Second World War. So what did those files contain? I read them all, and there's a grand wealth of information here, so let's jump in. Welcome back, everyone. My name is Riley Finwood, and you're listening to As Within, So Without. I had to take an extra week to prepare for this one, and I'm still not even fully prepared. This was quite the undertaking. These missing files, there are, I kid you not when I tell you, hundreds of pages, and they are difficult to read because a lot of them are distorted. A lot of them are photographs of people's handwritten letters, and a lot of them, they just didn't do a good job of making it easy to understand what was said. There's a lot of redacted information. There's a lot of, like I said, distortions. It looks like people spilled stuff all over these pages. I don't know if that was on purpose or not. It's a little sus. But yeah, I haven't even finished reading all of them at the time of you listening to this. I've read probably 45% of them. Before we even get to the missing pages, we have to talk about Nikola Tesla himself, the man, the legend. So in the news, we've been hearing a lot about Tesla recently. Tesla the company, not Tesla the man. I think Tesla the man is a little more interesting than Tesla the company. But as someone who invests in the stock market, of course I have Tesla in my brain often. So, 1, to stay with current events, we're going to talk about Tesla. 2, he's still relevant. Tesla's still relevant. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about Tesla. Then we're going to talk about a little bit of his history with Edison, because I think that's going to become relevant again later. Then we're going to talk about what is contained in the missing files. I do also want to talk about a little bit of his weird esoteric beliefs, because he did have those. And he also disagreed a lot with the theory of relativity, which is kind of a big deal. He was a weird dude. He was just a weird dude. We're going to talk about him. So let's just jump in. Nikola Tesla was a Serbian-American inventor, electrical engineer, mechanical engineer, and futurist. He was best known for his design of the alternating current electrical supply system. And we'll get into more into this aspect in a moment because it was the main reason for his feud with Thomas Edison. He was born July 10th, 1856 in the Austrian Empire, now Croatia. As a child, he demonstrated great academic ability, able to perform integral calculus in his head. Because of this, his teachers thought he was cheating. Who does that sound like? That kind of sounds like Edgar Cayce, doesn't it? No further comment on that. In 1873, he contracted cholera. For those who don't know, cholera is an infection of the small intestine that causes extreme diarrhea, vomiting, muscle cramps, and can lead to severe dehydration. So much so that this may result in your eyes sinking in, your feet and hands to wrinkle, and your skin to turn blue. So, he fought that disease for 9 months, almost dying several times. In despair, Tesla's father promised him that if he recovered, he would send him to the best engineering school and he would pay for it all. This bargaining seemed to have worked because Tesla soon recovered just in time to evade conscription, or the draft, into the Austro-Hungarian army. He ran away to the mountains, as we do, where he read Mark Twain obsessively, as we do, and let the power of nature heal his mind and body, because the cholera did a lot of damage to his mind and body. And naturally, he went to go live in the woods. Wouldn't we all? Like I said, he's a weird dude. Some other strange facts about Tesla: he was a germaphobe, an intense one. He used at least 17 clean towels a day. He also had a, quote, violent aversion to women's earrings. He had a photographic memory. He spoke 8 languages. And he began to see flashes of light in images, distorting his perception of reality. He claimed to have gotten inspiration this way, sort of a divine inspiration as maybe he would say. We don't know. Moving on to this guy's education. In 1875, he enrolled in the Graz University, I think I'm saying that right, Graz? Graz, University of Technology to study engineering and physics. He was a star student, but notoriously overworked himself. He worked from 3 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day, no exceptions, no holidays, no nothing, every single day. When his father died in 1879, Tesla found a bunch of letters from his concerned professors to his father, warning that if Tesla kept overworking himself, he could die. Tesla's father obviously never shared this information with him. At the end of the second year, it seemed he was unraveling, believe it or not. He became addicted to gambling and lost his allowance and tuition money, though he managed to win back his losses over the next year. By then, he was totally unprepared to graduate, and when he asked for an extension for his work, he was denied. So Tesla ended up dropping out of school. He severed all his relations with his family to hide the fact that he dropped out and moved to Budapest in 1881, as we do when we are ashamed to show our faces in front of our own families. So after bopping around to a few jobs he hated, he moved to Paris to get a job at the Continental Edison Company. And here's where it all begins. In 1884, they transferred him to the U.S., specifically New York City, to work at Machine Works on Manhattan's Lower East Side, an overcrowded shop with a workforce of several hundred laborers. Here's where we get to the beginning of the War of the Currents, a huge event that changed the course of history. We have to understand that Thomas Edison was primarily a businessman, out to create the next great electrical engine.
Riley, it seems you've been glitching a little bit more as of late.
I stutter when I get excited.
Luckily for you, the tower has been gracious recently. Resetting consciousness drive.
No, I'll do better.
Continue directive.
Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Riley Finwood, and you're listening to As Within, So Without. Wait a minute, I already said that, didn't I? Think I need to lay off the ice cream before going to bed. I've been losing time recently. Maybe I should do an episode on that. Losing time. There's a lot of cool stuff out there on that. But staying on track here. Here's where we get into the feud between Edison and Tesla. Edison is Tesla's boss, and we have to understand that Thomas Edison was primarily a businessman, out to create the next great electrical energy company. People tend to paint him as greedy, and there's plenty of good reason for that. Tesla was more the mad scientist, often on the metaphysical edge of science. He was terrible at handling money, obviously, as shown from his gambling stint from college. Spoiler alert, he dies broke in a hotel. Tesla began to work for Edison in 1882. So, Tesla insisted that he could increase the efficiency of Edison's prototypical dynamos, and eventually wore down Edison enough to let him try. Edison, Tesla later claimed, even promised him $50,000 if he succeeded. Tesla worked around the clock for several months and made a great deal of progress. When he demanded his reward, Edison claimed the offer was a joke, saying, "When you become a full-fledged American, you will appreciate an American joke." Edison offered a $10 a week raise instead. So not surprisingly, Tesla quit and eventually raised enough money to form the Tesla Electric Light Company, not to be confused with the Electric Light Orchestra, which came later, and was arguably just as important to the development of this country. Anyway, so Edison was a proponent of DC, or direct current, meaning the electrical current moves in one direction. I'm not going to go too deep into the electrical stuff here. I'm just going to give you a quick overview because I feel it's unnecessary to the whole picture and just may really confuse some people. So, the issue with direct current is that the current would peter out after a mile or so of travel. So Tesla invented the AC, or alternating current, meaning that every now and again the current would switch direction. And this method allowed electricity to travel hundreds of miles so that electricity could be brought directly into the homes of exponentially more people. So that's the system we use today. Spoiler alert. We still use direct current for some things, but their fight over this got pretty nasty. We're about to see a little bit of that. So Tesla teams up with George Westinghouse, an inventor, entrepreneur, also engineer, who helps him with the business sides of things, which Tesla didn't have a knack for, we know. Knowing that AC power was more powerful but unwilling to lose what he'd invested in DC, Edison starts a smear campaign against Tesla, saying that AC was dangerous, and publicly electrocuted animals to generate fear amongst the public. He killed dogs, horses, and even an elephant. Eventually, AC won out at the height of their feud when Tesla and Westinghouse won the contract to light the Chicago World's Fair in 1893. So yeah, that was it. The point of going into this was to show how Tesla was hyper-focused on what he was good at, inventing, being a dreamer, wanting progress for all humankind. This is important because we're going to see in a moment some of his more esoteric beliefs. So let's get into some of those weird beliefs that he had. Tesla disagreed with the theory of atoms being composed of smaller subatomic particles, stating that there was no such thing as an electron creating an electric charge. He believed that if electrons existed at all, they were some fourth state of matter, or subatom, that could exist only in experimental vacuum, that they had nothing to do with electricity. Tesla believed that atoms are immutable. They could not change state or split in any way. He was a believer in the 19th century concept of an all-pervasive ether that transmitted electrical energy. Tesla was generally antagonistic towards theories about the conversion of matter into energy. He was also critical of Einstein's theory of relativity, saying, "I hold that space cannot be curved for the simple reason that it can have no properties." It might as well be said that God has properties. He has not, but only attributes, and these are of our own making. Of properties, we can only speak when dealing with matter filling the space. To say that in the presence of large bodies, space becomes curved is equivalent to stating that something can act upon nothing. I, for one, refuse to subscribe to such a view. So he didn't like Einstein's theory of relativity. Who does? I mean, come on. Tesla claimed to have developed his own physical principle regarding matter and energy that he started working with in 1892. And in 1937, at age 81, claimed in a letter to have completed a dynamic theory of gravity that would put an end to idle speculations and false conceptions as that of curved space. He stated that the theory was worked out in all the details and that he hoped to soon give it to the world. Further elucidation of this theory was never found in his writings. Moving on, because I don't know how to make sense of that. Because as we're going to find out soon, a lot of people thought Tesla had gone mad by the time he was 81. So there's not a lot of credit going to this. I mean, obviously the theory of relativity is still pretty, holds pretty well, but who knows? We don't know. Nobody knows anything. Is what I'm learning very quickly while doing all this research for this podcast is, people claim to know things. People claim to know things all the time. But how can we really know things? How can we really know anything at all? If there is or is not an objective truth, how are we to know? We are but small. We are but tiny. We are small, yet we contain multitudes. Walt Whitman, something or another. I was an English major. Anyway, Tesla was raised as an Orthodox Christian, believe it or not. Later in life, he did not consider himself to be a believer in the Orthodox sense, and he opposed religious fanaticism and said that Buddhism and Christianity are the greatest religions, both in number of disciples and importance. He also said, "To me, the universe is simply a great machine which never came into being and never will end. And what we call soul or spirit is nothing more than the sum of functionings of the body. When this functioning ceases, the soul or the spirit ceases likewise." And before we all argue with Mr. Tesla about this, just remember, he's dead. We can't argue with him. So that's just his opinion, man. We can all have those. Now that all that's out of the way, that's only a small snapshot of an overview of who Tesla the man was. I wanted to get through that because it really helps create a better picture. But yeah, he was significant. He totaled about 112 U.S. patents by the time he died. Some of his most major inventions were the Tesla coil, the magnifying transmitter, the Tesla turbine, the shadowgraph, the radio, the neon lamp, the Niagara Falls transformer house, the induction motor, the radio-controlled boat, alternating current, which we just talked about. Yeah, lots of stuff there. So yeah, moving forward. In 2016, the FBI released a bunch of his missing files. They were Okay, so we're going to see in a minute the FBI claims to not have had any of this information. It's a big point of contention within the documents themselves, and I'll explain in a moment. But okay, here's the background of all that. So he was found dead in January of 1943 in a hotel room in New York City, which is where he lived. He spent the last 10 years of his life living in hotels. The U.S. Office of Alien Property seized documents relating to his work as soon as the body was found. Keep that in mind. The U.S. Office of Alien Property. And this is interesting because Tesla was naturalized as an American citizen. So technically, the Office of Alien Property, did they really have jurisdiction over this? Yeah, this is a big question, and we're gonna talk about it. He claimed to have invented a particle beam weapon, a death ray, at the height of I cannot say World War II, so you're gonna have to bear with me. World War II, at the height of it. He also mentioned an impenetrable force field, one that could cover the whole country if needed. So the government kept these documents classified in fear of the death ray falling into the wrong hands, especially considering what year it was. And we didn't get to see these documents. Many people have tried and failed to get this information from the FBI between then and 2016. And a lot of these files, admittedly, are just records of correspondence between people trying to get information about Tesla and the FBI saying, no, we don't have it. Sorry, we weren't even there. That's what the FBI kept saying. According to John J. Trump, yes, Trump's engineer uncle, quote, reported that his analysis quoted Tesla's efforts to be primarily of a speculative, philosophical, and promotional character, and said that the papers did not include new, sound, workable principles or methods for realizing such results. So, yeah, well, as we're going to see, we don't really know how feasible these things are. We don't really know how feasible his ideas are, is what the point of that was. So that's pretty much what we opened up with in these files. And the FBI used this report as evidence that the death ray didn't really exist and that it was all just speculation and theory. Which seems like a good way to... I'm not going to put my opinion here. We're not doing that this time, Riley. We're not going to think for the people. We're going to let the people think for themselves. You are here to present the information, not make judgments on the information. Good job, Riley. So like I said, I read/attempted to read the pages, and there's so much redacted information. There's so much distortion on a lot of the pages. Some of them are just flat out impossible to read, and I'll leave a link to them in my show notes if you don't believe me. I spent a lot of time on this. Like I still have crazy eyes from how long I spent staring at the computer screen. But let's go through some of the key points here. I'll summarize it for you so you don't have to read it. The first page is a letter to J. Edgar Hoover, the director of the FBI at the time, and really bad dude. We don't like J. Edgar Hoover. A lot of us don't. One of the big reasons is he ran a counter movement against Martin Luther King Jr. So, yeah, not a very good guy. So the first few pages are about this article that was released regarding Tesla's work on the teleforce, or the particle beam technology that we were talking about. The letter states that if this information is indeed true, it would be of great use to the U.S. military, but also that they should be cognizant of the possibility that Tesla could be kidnapped by an enemy and tortured for this information. That was the letter from a redacted name to Hoover about this article, just to clarify. So let's talk about what we all want to talk about. Let's talk about the death ray. What is that? He claims that this particle beam could melt airplane engines from 250 miles away. He also claims that it's based on an entirely new principle of physics, and that the beam would be 1/100 millionth of a single square centimeter. It would cost no less than $2 million to build this machine, and would only take 3 months to complete. It sounds a little too good to be true, I'll be honest, Tesla. I'll be honest with you about that, man. That sounds a little out there. Anyway, he also claimed that this thing would have the power of 50 million volts, and if placed in particular strategic areas around the country, it would protect it from any aerial threat. But he says, if the government took him up on his offer, they would have to trust him completely, giving him all control of the project. And I can see how that would be met with resistance, so to say. Keep in mind, Tesla died 3 years later in 1943, broke, in a hotel room. At the time of me researching this, I have yet to come up with any correlation between the release of the article and his death, but my mind will be attuned to the possibility. Not to get a little tinfoil hat here, but most likely he just died of old age, but we'll see. So upon his death, the government entity, the U.S. Office of Alien Property, seized all of his work. It was enough to fill up 2 trucks. 2 trucks. Need I remind you, he was living in a hotel room. He had enough work in that hotel room to fill up 2 trucks. He was also in a lot of debt for the hotel. He didn't have any money. And that balance remained outstanding after he died, and the hotel employees reported that he was, quote, eccentric and possibly deranged for the past 10 years. Though obviously we can't confirm or deny this, as it is eyewitness reports, but we'll keep this in mind moving forward. Moving on, we have more correspondence between government officials pertaining to keeping all this hush-hush for national security reasons if Tesla wasn't indeed insane and actually had some blueprints for some amazing, dangerous tech. The next few pages, we have the FBI's records of them attempting to seize the rest of Tesla's stuff. They went to a storage unit that they knew he used for a while. They contacted a bunch of individuals who had personal letters, patents, and other affects of his. Then we get to some records of correspondence regarding Tesla's legacy, some article clippings, blah, 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 blah. And then we finally get to some good stuff. Much of this next chunk of information is correspondence between various people, scientists, Tesla fans, students, etc., trying to get the information that was impounded by the government, and Mr. Hoover turning them all down, claiming that the FBI didn't have this information, and that it was under the jurisdiction of the Office of Alien Property. Remember this. Fun fact, Tesla was naturalized as an American citizen in 1884, so did the Office of Alien Property really have legal jurisdiction? Turns out my gut was right, because in the mid-70s, there's a letter from a man, name redacted, whose response to how the FBI director, the new FBI director, Clarence M. Kelly's response, copy-pasted from Hoover's responses, to his request for information. Quote, in my letter of the 16th, I did not mean to imply that the FBI had impounded his effects, as I was aware of the OAP's general part in the affair. The fact remains that, to the best of my knowledge, it was the agents of the FBI who did, in fact, break into his safe only hours after his death and did remove the papers therein. Then he starts getting sassy, gains a little momentum on the spicy meter. He says, well, he wants to know who asked the FBI to do this and why, asks for the names of the supposed FBI agents responsible for stealing the papers. He takes a really accusatory turn here, and then he says, if the people who opened the safe were not FBI agents, then it was people posing as FBI agents, and basically demands more information. He mentions how Tesla was able to transmit thousands of watts of electrical power to any point in the globe without wires, making him a prime target for vested interest groups. He says, with just a hint of sarcasm, I am aware of the well-earned tradition of the Bureau of not serving a master, but the common good. As again, we have a curious point if indeed strings were pulled. Quite frankly, it looks as if someone went to a lot of trouble to see that his ideas were not broadly available to ensure the stability of their own electric technological apple cart financially, at the expense of unguessable benefits to humanity as a whole. How would you like to be able to draw unlimited power out of the air to run a light bulb with one wire? He did it, and much more. My sincere thanks to your thoughts and attentions to this matter. Very best wishes, redacted. So redacted seems to be implying here that a certain person or group of people would have had a vested interest in keeping his technology even more secret. Is probably also implying how free energy would affect the world, especially economically. It's definitely a very emotional letter, definitely very angry. So Kelly responds, and I'll just read it because it's like 2 sentences. This will acknowledge receipt of your letter to the Bureau on November 14th. In response to your inquiry, the papers of Dr. Nikola Tesla were impounded after his death by the Office of Alien Property of the Department of Justice. Sincerely yours, C.M. Kelly. Oh, the drag. I love it. So Mr. Redacted responds again. And I'm just invested in the drama at this point. I don't even care about Tesla. I just want to know what sort of clapback nonsense Mr. Redacted has in store for Mr. Kelly. So he responds back and basically threatens to publish the FBI's response as an example of how they sneakily maneuver around the Freedom of Information Act. So keep in mind, the Freedom of Information Act was effective July 5th, 1967. We didn't get these papers until 2016. So what the heck is my question? This guy, Mr. Redacted, hits the nail on the head. He's like, if you keep circumventing the Freedom of Information Act this way, I'm going to publish it and start a smear campaign against you, basically, is the threat. And then he just keeps sending the same reply of, the FBI doesn't have this information. I don't know what you're talking about. But then it gets a little weirder. There's letter upon letter of random people. There's no way to tell who they are because their names are blacked out. It would offer a lot of great context, but I can't tell you who these people are. So I don't know if they're wackadoos or if they're scholars or if they're spies. I have no idea who's asking for this information. But there's letter upon letter of people going, hey, so what happened to Tesla's secret work after he died? And the FBI just keeps... they have this letter already printed out. They're just sending it to people over and over again of, we don't have the information. We don't have the information. I would love to give you the information, but we don't have the information. It started to get frustrating to read these after a while because I'm like, I know what's going to happen until this one response. Someone connected to the Tesla project contacts Mr. Kelly at one point. And I know it's the Tesla project because they allow that amount of information to slip through in the letter. So he's contacting the FBI concerned over the contents of Tesla's unpublished diary, especially pertaining to his information on ball lightning falling into the hands of Soviets. Now, those of you who don't know, ball lightning, very interesting topic here. It's basically a ball of electricity that sometimes forms during storms and it may bounce around. It can slip through glass without breaking it. It's just weird. It's just weird. There's videos of it on YouTube. The thing about this is in order for something to bounce, it requires surface tension. And I don't know about you, but a ball of lightning doesn't seem to have very much surface tension. So long story short, we still don't know much about ball lightning today. Fun fact, Tesla blew up his own lab a few times trying to figure it out. So there's that. So the person writing the letter speculates that ball lightning, if injected with lithium, could produce a cheap fusion bomb. Now, I don't know if this is true or not. Obviously, take that with a grain of salt. Unless you know all about that, then if you know all about that, let me know. Send me an email at riley@aswithinsowithoutpodcast.com. Because I'm not perfect and I don't know everything, even though I want to. So if you know anything about ball lightning, let's talk about it. Speaking of, quick shout out to Casper Bloom on Instagram, who reached out to me regarding the CIA document series. We talked about the missing page. We exchanged our own theories about that. And, I think we should do that more often. So if you have any ideas, hit me up. You can hit me up on Instagram if you want, Facebook. It's really easy to find me. And soon the Patreon is up. If you would like to go check that out, there's going to be a small community I'm trying to direct over there. So if you're interested in that, go over to my Patreon. You can get there via the website, or you can just search me in Patreon itself. Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be so awesome. I tell you what, I'm one person doing a solo cast most of the time. I have some interviews planned coming up, but mostly it's just me, and I'm going to miss some things, so please correct me. Please expand on my concepts here. I would love that. So going back to the man or woman from the Tesla project asking about the ball lightning. They also say that Tesla claimed that ball lightning could be used to destroy aircraft. Lightning, yeah, okay, yeah. 3, the person also speculates that ball lightning can be used to make hover vehicles, specifically saying that, quote, air vehicles of revolutionary configuration, maybe flying saucers. There's a little hint of some flying saucer stuff later. That's when shit gets really weird. Right now, we're just like fringe weird. We get like super, super weird later. And it just gets more and more just falling down this hole of weird. Anyway, so for some reason, after this letter in particular, Kelly changes his response, and I'll just read it to you. It's still pretty short. He says, "Dear Redacted, this is to acknowledge receipt of your Freedom of Information Privacy Act's request forwarded to the FBI by the Department of Justice on October 22nd. In response to your request for files pertaining to Nikola Tesla, please be advised that in order to preserve the privacy of an individual who may be the subject of a similar inquiry, it has been necessary for the FBI to maintain the practice of not indicating whether we do or do not have such information in our files. If you can provide notarized authorization from Mr. Tesla's next of kin, directing us to release to you any information our files may contain concerning him, we shall thereafter search our files and advise you accordingly. Since we have not conducted a search of our files, please do not infer that we do or do not have the information you requested. Sincerely yours, Mr. Kelly." Okay, now they're saying we might have it, we might not have it. We need further information from you to give it to you because of the privacy of Mr. Tesla and his family. Man, make up your mind, FBI. Geez, do you have the information? Why are you playing hard to get? So just to recap all of this here, this is the first about 200 pages of the missing files is correspondence between people wanting to learn more about Tesla and his missing papers and his speculative works, and the FBI just saying, nope. You got the wrong guy. We don't have it. So it got kind of frustrating to read it after a while. There was some funny stuff in there, but again, I can't really make a whole lot of sense of it because I don't know who's sending the letters. I mean, I could send a letter to the FBI today and say some crazy stuff, and they would have to put it in a file. I mean, if we're being honest. Maybe I should try that. What do you think? Now, this next chunk, I am out of time. I'm not going to talk about this next one. I'm just going to tease it a little bit. But we start talking about flying saucers. Not particularly that Tesla had flying saucers, but a woman named Margaret Storm, who was associated with Tesla somehow. I'm still doing some work on that. The only other source that I could find on Margaret Storm in the short amount of time that I attempted was this weird website, like old HTML, like really gaudy, bright neon colors, a terrible website. And before I stopped my research to go to sleep, because I was obviously very tired, the last thing I saw was Margaret Storm may or may not have been in love with Tesla. And that also claimed that Tesla came from Venus. Which gives a whole new meaning to Office of Alien Property, if you know what I'm saying. Oh, I'm so sorry I had to do that. Anyway, so I'm going to leave you with that. Yeah, sleep on that one. So we're going to talk about that more next episode. I don't know how many parts this is going to be because I've barely scratched the surface and I've already been speaking for 30 minutes. Yeah, I will catch you guys next time. But last thing, I just really wanted to say thank you. We have been really growing really quickly, and that is all thanks to you. You want to listen. You want to be a part of this journey with me, and I am so happy and excited to be able to do this for you. I really like it when you guys reach out to me and ask questions or just want to talk about the episode. It really makes me feel like I'm connecting. Like I'm not just throwing words into an abyss, a big silent void that eats my thoughts and feelings like a leviathan, like a vampiric entity that takes my love and joy and passion and sucks it all up for itself and makes itself stronger. Meanwhile, I go weaker and weaker and wither away like the leaves in the fall. But that's not what's happening, and I am so happy. Really makes me feel good. So keep doing that. Ask me questions. I will probably shout you out. So there's that. Once again, thank you so much. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to As Within, So Without. Visit us at aswithinsowithoutpodcast.com for extra content such as blog posts, show notes, and more. There you can also subscribe to our email list. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future shows, you can contact Riley directly at riley@aswithinSoWithoutPodcast.com. Thanks again for listening.